in my experience, we navigate a lot of these conversations ahead of time.
Okay.
And and I get a really good sense of what it is that they're wanting and needing. Certainty is an understatement. I think, you know, um, those of us in HR, those of us in leadership positions, those of us running companies and needing to continue to make important decisions on the daily. I think there's still so much power in the person-to-person connection, the the skills that are required to build relationships, build and maintain relationships. I don't think anything's going to ever go back to pre-COVID days.
Mhm.
There's certain organizations and there's certain industries that are always going to need to be on site, and they're not going to have the work from home
Yeah.
um, options like some of us do.
Hello, team. It's a pleasure to be back with you this week. And of course, having the opportunity to discuss some of the more pressing issues happening around the world, in particular in the workplace. And I'm guessing, regardless of where you are on this global environment at the moment, there's a high probability that you're facing some challenges right at this present minute. Aside from those countries in the grips of war, perhaps workplaces are facing uncertainty everywhere and upheaval, but maybe not more so than in the US right as we speak. And we'll probably glaze over that a little bit, but there's possibly many out there like myself who are a little bit cautious about what's happening in the US, thinking what we're witnessing there may well have the potential to spread elsewhere. So I'm sure many of us are going to be watching and listening with a great deal of interest. We're going to talk about all things people today. We're going to be diving into the dynamic world of HR, exploring many of the key challenges that we are facing, but perhaps also some opportunities that are helping to shape our workplaces, whether that's driven through the politics, whether it's technology, or even the corporate sector, perhaps. We'll be examining what I see as a rapidly evolving landscape. So, as always, to guide us through this journey, I'm not going to do it alone. Our guest, Rhiannon Albert, is with us all the way from Boise, Idaho. Rhiannon, welcome to the ET Project.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. We're going to definitely have to touch on the politics a little bit that's happening in the US. We won't go very deep at all, but I'm sure everyone's interested to hear a little bit of a perspective from you. But let's start with your company, My Trusted HR, and what was the journey like leading up to founding the business?
Yeah. So I founded this business after I had spent 18 years in the corporate landscape, serving a multitude of industries, and really just felt like executives and leaders were looking for a more flexible option for their human resources needs. And so that's what made me launch into this. I've been doing this almost 6 years on my own,
Mm.
23 years in HR. I've seen a lot of things.
I can well imagine. Probably not many as what's happening at the moment. What are some of the values and the missions within the company? Like, what is your purpose? What are you out to try and achieve?
Yeah. So my purpose is really to educate, mitigate risk. Like as you spoke about, there's a lot of risk in the world of compliance, and I do a lot of investigations, workplace investigations.
Right.
Um, and as we see, there's just a lot of worry. A lot of executives don't want to be doing this kind of work.
Mhm.
They're looking for a trusted partner that can help walk them through that.
Right. Well, I'm sure. given where you are at the moment, you're having a lot of discussions around compliance. So we won't go too deep onto that, but I can only imagine how that's going to unfold in the future. Is there any particular experience in different industries that have helped you shape the services that you offer?
I think that for me, it's been kind of a learning process.
Mm,
Um, you know, fractional HR leadership is really kind of my specialty.
right.
It's stepping in to serve as a leader, coaching and mentoring the existing HR team.
Mm,
Uh, and I just find that that's the best way for me to drive a lot of value because it's such a cycle. Suddenly finding that you need to terminate your VP of HR,
right.
or you suddenly find yourself without leadership. Um, and so, stepping into that role, providing immediate value, providing the executive team that comfort that don't worry, we've got this taken care of. We've got someone in the spot.
Right.
We've got someone to answer those regulatory questions about what do we do now? We've got a tough FMLA case or a really, you know, unfortunate incident with work comp. How do we navigate that?
Mm,
Uh, you know, so and then also, being there to support the process while you're navigating your search for that next incumbent. And then also supporting the team while that incumbent comes on board, meets all the important shareholders within the organization, and then, um, starting to phase out so that they can sail the ship on their own. So,
I can imagine one of the key attributes that you must bring is communication. It sounds like you're coming into an environment that is in going through its own upheaval, there's probably extreme uncertainty, and somehow you have to come in and steady the ship. How do you go about that? Like from a practical point of view, when you come on board with these companies, how do you start that process?
yeah. The process, I don't know. It feels very natural to me.
Mm,
Uh, Maybe it's the years of experience. Maybe it's the start of my career. I loved to temp. Do you know what that is?
yeah.
Like being a temporary worker and
Yes.
being thrown into any situation and providing value and learning the job and, helping the teammates do
Mm,
whatever needed to be done. But that's that's some of my favorite parts of what I do. Just I have a knack for stepping in and recognizing the priorities,
mm,
recognizing what seems to be the biggest issue that we'll want to tackle first, but
yeah.
then also navigating all of the other pieces and parts, and then just bringing that peace of mind to the team, that I do know my stuff and I am able and capable of, leading them through it.
Mm.
So,
In doing a little bit of background research, you talk about compliance audits. So how do you apply those when you move into this type of role? Like
yeah.
I can imagine through my own experience with compliance audits, it takes quite a bit to set up and
Mhm.
to work through the process. Is there a particular approach in doing
Yeah.
that?
So I typically like to do that in unison with uh, all of the other pieces that need to be dealt with right away.
Right.
Um, and but that compliance piece, there's a lot of people that conduct audits. It's
Mm,
it's nothing unique to me, but I really love the process that I've developed over the years because
mm,
it really does give a beautiful snapshot of the entire organization as as in regards to the 27 facets of HR, um, and really highlights the areas of the most weakness.
Mm.
Um, so if I do jump into an organization and, hit the ground running, we're usually building as we're flying, right? But as we navigate that, and as I'm learning from the team and seeing things play out in front of me, it becomes very obvious where we are. And I always like to encourage companies too, don't take it to mean too much. It is really a snapshot in time.
Yeah,
So if this is where you're at now, that doesn't mean you're failing at anything or that you're a
sure.
terrible organization. It just means that we need to think through some of these other pieces and find a smarter way to proceed.
Mm.
But it's a great tool.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice as well, because I mean, companies don't just operate on a straight linear um, progression.
No,
It's like looking at a stock chart, right? It's going to have its peaks, its troughs, and you come in and you look at something at that moment in time. Could just be because something else has triggered that to happen. It
totally.
doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Exactly.
Right.
And there's
I,
just so much value in that outside perspective,
right. Yes,
you know.
for sure, for sure. Uh, been there, done that. So when you're looking at these organizations, I can imagine there's from time to time a number of tough decisions that you have to make as well, particularly with the senior executives. Do they give you that freedom to come in and make those types of suggestions typically, or is it more of a because you're coming as a fractional CHRO, are you typically putting together a report that is then decided whether they're going to pursue that? Like, what do you find is your experience?
Uh, in my experience, we navigate a lot of these conversations ahead of time.
Okay.
And and I get a really good sense of what it is that they're wanting and needing.
Hmm.
And as we know, serving clients, what they think they need isn't always what we might think they need, right? So
Right.
serving their desires first is always kind of my plan.
Mm.
Um, and by way of that, I can start showing them more. And then, because there's no way to know really, I never know exactly what I'm walking into.
Yeah.
But having that partnership, I would say that partnership, you start building it from day one, and and then everything becomes, I wouldn't say a negotiation,
Hmm.
but a conversation. Here's something that I see, and I think that this warrants a discussion, or this warrants a further look.
Mm.
Um, but I like to do it, via that relationship, a
Right.
partnership, a trusted partnership. And, if there's certain things they feel strongly about, we can navigate those. But I don't, um, I don't find too much resistance just because it is that outside perspective that you're seeking when you are typically hiring a consultant, such as myself.
Mm. And I think that's a very smart approach because I know in my own case and in many of my colleagues' case over my career, we used to have a tendency to look at HR as an external body to the operation and have the belief that they didn't really understand the operation and therefore why would we listen to their suggestion? So I think based on what you've said, you're coming at it with the angle of not trying to portray that you understand their business, but to look at it from a different set of eyes and give some input that may or may not be, what they're ready to buy into.
Well, and this is a touchy topic for me because HR, there's a stereotype, and it isn't necessarily a good one. And, you know, if I am struggling to fight this until the day I die, so be it. But I want to be seen as more of a strategic partner,
Mm,
um, somebody that does understand the business and that is a perfect resource to work hand in hand with all of the other departments of the organization to
yeah.
make things better. I mean, we're used to working with marketing, recruiting and, all the different tie-ins. But some of us are very experienced in working with finance and operations.
Mm,
And, you know, the right kind of partners are working in conjunction with everything else, and you couldn't imagine trying to do it without any one piece.
yeah,
So,
for sure. It is, the sum of the pieces are bigger than the whole, right? So
yep.
I think HR definitely has a valuable input. They should be where they are. They should be at the table on the board, and maybe it's not perceived that way all the time. But I'm with you in that concept. So yeah,
Yeah.
we can't have our conversation without touching on a little bit of what's happening in America at the moment. I don't want to go too deep.
Mhm.
It's still very new. We're not 100% sure what direction everything's going, but topics such as DEI, immigration, the things that are happening right at the moment through the policy changes, I can only imagine the uncertainty that people are
Mhm.
feeling right at the moment.
Yes. It is February 5th, 2025.
Right.
Yes, uncertainty is an understatement. I think, you know, um, those of us in HR, those of us in leadership positions, those of us running companies and needing to continue to make important decisions on the daily. Um, I think everybody is a little tentative about what do we do now?
Yeah.
So many businesses rely on the shipment of goods from here to there and across country borders, and all of it is an unknown.
Mm.
But
Sorry.
yeah, I was just going to say that the DEI space, my thoughts on it is that while I'm watching colleagues lose their jobs um, because they work in this space,
Yeah.
um, to me, my message would just be that we are always going to be stronger with diversity, uh, diversity in thought, diversity and inclusion. Fundamental to all of this is respect. And workplaces without a solid understanding and expectation of respect,
Yeah.
what is that? Yikes. That is a scary place to be if the fundamental items uh dissolve. So, I
Yeah.
when you are working in a place that doesn't understand the value of respect for your colleagues, diverse or not, right? That's when you have harassment. That's when you have bigger, worse things. So, to me, I think we need to stay true to what we know is right
Mm.
and stay vigilant
Yeah.
to conduct ourselves in a way that we're proud of, and despite
Yeah.
what everything else is telling us.
In in your role coming into an organization, as you mentioned earlier, you have a need to come in and give advice around legislative issues. How do you stay current yourself? Like, do you have a source or do you have a go-to location where you can stay up to date with all the latest changes?
Yeah. I mean, I am constantly reading,
Mm.
um, and I serve all 50 states here in the US. So it keeps me busy.
That must
But,
be a huge task because different states have different legislation, I believe, right?
and so I do lean on certain resources and tools,
Mm.
but the Society of Human Resource Management is a global
Mm.
resource for HR professionals. You know, when I became certified with them many years ago, we all kind of like agree to a creed that says that we're going to leave workplaces better than we found them. So that's a big tool for me. And then I use a multitude of other resources just to keep me up to date.
Right, right. How, as you work in the HR, so my pedigree within the HR space is in the learning area, and
Yeah.
I'm wondering how much do you get involved as you come in as a fractional CHRO or COO or whatever role you're playing? How much do you get involved with the learning side of the organization?
Personally, I am a big fan of this space just
Mm.
because I think it's so critical for leadership development, for just providing opportunities within the organization. It's such a critical piece, and I think businesses that invest in this space are always going to be better off.
Right.
But it just depends on the needs of the leadership. So
Mm.
if that piece is working and functioning, and I still might offer some suggestions based on workflows and overarching processes and the strategy of the organization, where we need to grow, maybe where we're needing to hire. So I'll always utilize the resources of the organization or make recommendations. Um, but if it's not something that is necessarily broken, it might take me a bit to get to that.
Right. Yeah, right. I
Mhm.
was wondering, I guess, around the reskilling, the upskilling, with the technological advances, with the whole dynamics within business today, and the need for all of us to be continually refreshing our skill levels and knowledge level. How are you seeing organizations approach that? Have you had any particular experience that you think is like a good example versus one where it's been ignored?
Yeah, I have experienced clients that make it a priority to invest in this space. They
Mm.
are on top of, the advancements with AI. They're on top of or wanting to stay on top of, what do we need to be doing to reskill, um, and provide and simply just provide opportunities for growth or, you know, ladder changes or, hopping over to another department.
Yeah,
Um, so I've gotten to work in those organizations and, definitely you know, growth and opportunity and curiosity is alive and well. And there's so many opportunities with that. And then I've also worked for plenty of organizations where they just didn't make it a priority or it wasn't on the, short list of where our, investments are going to be headed. So,
mm,
you know, it's it's really it really just differs with each organization. There's certain industries that can afford it. And then
yeah,
there's other industries that are struggling, to stay afloat with all of the
yeah.
different factors. So,
That's certainly our experience as
but
well.
that
And
kind of sounds like an excuse too. So, I don't want that to sound like an excuse. I think it's such a critical thing that businesses should be investing in. But, every business leader is having to make important decisions on what needs to stay and what needs to go. So, I
Yeah.
understand.
And what we find is a lot of the leaders are a little bit paralyzed when it comes to making that decision because the AI space is so rapid in its change, in its shift in direction. In many instances, many of the leaders that we engage with are really a little bit frozen in their thinking about when they should jump in or whether they should jump in. So I
Mhm.
guess that, particularly the smaller businesses um, who don't have the funds, like you suggest.
Yep.
How do you see AI in the HR space? Like, do you see it bringing wholesale change? I know we've seen it over the years start to really come into the recruitment side of the business. Do you see it broader than that at this stage?
I wish I had a quote available to me, but I was speaking to uh, a college class recently, and there's going to be huge effects with regard to all administrative tasks. As we would expect, right? Certain tasks are going to probably be better done by AI, and this automation. But I think there will be very lasting effects as far as, certain work just going away. Um, and more of the strategic roles are still going to be present. But, I think it's going to be, uh, like you said, upskilling for everybody involved because there's going to be a lot of jobs that are going to go away in the future.
Mhm.
So, what do we all need to be doing to future-proof our own careers and make ourselves valuable regardless of the times?
Yeah. If we put a generational overview on that thought process,
Mhm.
do you see the struggle with people like myself, baby boomer generation versus even the alphas who maybe not in the workforce yet, but do you see that being a bigger issue in the immediate term for the older generation?
I think there's still so much power in the person-to-person connection, the the skills that are required to build relationships, build and maintain relationships.
Mm,
And so I would like to think that there's certain things that will stand the test of time, um, because we as people are going to still hunger for that.
mhm.
But it's not to say that AI can't learn a little bit of that too.
Right.
It'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see. I don't have a crystal ball, but
I was speaking with one lady who was in HR recently in Australia, and she was talking about the silver fox um, movement. I guess not the word she used, but my take on it is that companies have started to recognize the value of having at least a portion of their leadership team workplace in that over 50 bracket. So based on the experience that they might still be able to bring, based on the communication, the conversations, the nucleus. Have you seen any movement in that direction?
I mean, I think you're talking to somebody who very much values diversity. I
Mhm.
value diversity of thought. I value diversity in generations and the different values that each generation brings.
Right.
There's greatness in each of us, and I'd hate to see anybody like ousted, because there's so much value that can be learned from having us all working together. I
Mhm.
think there's, a lot of companies now have, what is it, 5 or 6 generations at work now? And
Yes.
does it pose problems? Yes, it does. There's there's very different ways of thinking,
Mm.
but once we master how to how to work within that, it's all good. It's all
Mm.
good stuff. We can learn from each other.
The beauty comes out of the messiness quite often, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
the innovation, the creativity, the
Nothing's easy, right?
nothing is easy, particularly when we're dealing with people. We're all unique. We're all unique, and that's what makes HR such a vital ingredient. We haven't spoken yet about one of my favorite topics, which is working from home or the hybrid environment. And I know we touched on it a little bit when we first connected.
Yeah.
How do you see that space at the moment in terms of will it stay? Will it be wound back to pre-COVID days? What's your feeling?
I don't think anything's going to go back to pre-COVID days.
Mhm.
There's certain organizations and there's certain industries that are always going to need to be on site, and they're not going to have the work from home
Yeah,
um, options like some of us do. Um, and I also think there's always going to be value in having people literally get to come together for whatever reason, whether it's work or meetings or, so so those things withstanding, there's also a lot of growth and development that I'm proud to see,
yeah,
where leaders are embracing the fact that their teams can still drive amazing results and they don't have to be at the office.
yeah.
And we all remember the days where we were at the office, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're being effective or efficient.
Right.
So I like to see that there have been advancements in this space. There's been a lot of technology improvements that
Mm.
allow us to work remotely, really from anywhere, but feel like we get to work together. So, I don't think we're going back to pre-COVID times, but I also think businesses are going to have a really hard time all of a sudden demanding everybody come back to the office unless there's a real significant reason why they can justify that.
Yeah.
I think the biggest push is going to be teaching leaders how best to, you know, motivate and stay connected with their teams and how to still drive results no matter where their people are.
Mm. As you said, technology is evolving to make this work from home hybrid environment more doable anyway. And it's quite interesting to watch some of the companies that are suggesting return to work be the technology companies. So it's quite an interesting dynamic that's happening. One of the things that I'm, excuse me, that I'm fascinated by is we see so many pictures in the media, on social media, of people working from home. And you look at it from a ergonomics point of view, you look at it from a safety point of view, um, in terms of how they're sitting, how they're typing, how their eyesight to their smaller laptop, the whole raft of different dynamics that we have and we take for granted when we work at home versus the struggle that we've been going through for the last 100 years in an office environment to make it as pristine as possible in terms of health and safety. I'm wondering how long it might be, if it hasn't already happened, how long it might be before we see some sort of issues arise based on how people have forgotten to think about their own health and safety in that work from home environment.
Hmm. Yeah, you can be all cuddled up on the couch with your cat and your dog, and your laptop, and you're exactly right. I think we had a hard time really driving ergonomic perfection when we were in the office.
Mm,
Um, but now it's even harder. And I know there have been work comp cases. I
yeah,
know there have been issues around this because we have even less control, even less visibility to
mm,
how people are doing that. I think the companies that are being a little more proactive um, in their messaging and their training um, about ergonomics and safety and still keeping that top of mind when they're
mm,
working with their teams, I think they're going to um, fare better.
right. I mean, you bring up a good point there with workers' compensation. I mean, it's such a broad. We used to talk about, you know, workers' compensation starts from the moment you start your journey to the office and then journey back home. Where's the line now for people working from home? When does work start? When does it finish? When it comes to a workers' compensation claim?
I know. That's a great question.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
maybe there is a like technically sound answer to that that I
mm,
don't know, but you're exactly right. I mean, what are the bounds and how would we know? And yeah, you're exactly right. It's muddied the line on a lot of things.
yeah. I'm
Mhm.
sure we'll work through it as it evolves, but interesting times. What do you see as the biggest challenge right at the moment for the HR world? Um, putting politics and policy change to one side, but what do you see as the biggest challenge?
Um, Good question. I think when we were going through COVID, there was almost a respect that came out of that for all of the pieces and parts that we hadn't really thought about that we had to all of a sudden think about. Um, so that brought, I think, a good, healthy appreciation for all that HR professionals do throughout the world. Um, Now I think we're just being challenged once again by I don't know, there's a lot of push still, in my opinion, to further the bar, raise the bar on the stereotype of HR, um, being considered more of a business partner, a respected, trusted part of the team
Mm,
that has a seat at the table. That's something that I'm always pushing for. But I also think the onset of AI, what roles can be duplicated, how to stand out in a career such as this,
mhm.
how to be a good partner internally, externally to help the leadership and drive results. Uh, I think we've got a lot of challenges ahead of us, but it's also a very exciting time to be in this career. So I don't know. I'm excited. I'm choosing to be hopeful about the future rather than dismal about it.
What's next for Rhiannon? Where are you where are you focused at the moment?
Yeah. So um, I've gotten to serve a lot of amazing clients in the years that I've been doing this, and I think I really want to continue to specialize in the area of fractional, interim HR leadership.
Mhm,
Um, I love that space and getting to really drive value that way. Getting to be a partner to the entire team, and the managers throughout the organization, the executive team, and their questions and concerns, but really just delivering that peace of mind. I'm usually met with a lot of fear, a lot of trepidation, a lot of concerns. It's a pretty scary place to be for a lot of executives,
Mm.
but delivering the things that they need most to bring them peace of mind.
I can imagine one of the big values that you bring to an organization as somebody coming in from the external is the breadth of exposure and experience that you bring rather than somebody who has worked in the organization for the last 20 years may
Yes.
not have that same perspective of
Mhm.
everything. Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody the other day about this, and that is so well said because when I'm working with clients all the time, they don't realize that a lot of their fears and worries and frustrations are very, very similar,
Mm.
pretty much on point with other people in their industry, other business owners of their similar size. And, you know, that's a very true statement. And I think that there's just so much value to having somebody that you trust um, from the outside be able to weigh in and give you that perspective. Because the other piece is that executive teams, all of the information they're getting is kind of scrubbed. They're, they're going to be hearing kind of what they want to hear, and their teams are not going to be confident. They don't want to lose their job, so they're not going to be as confident to give them the reality
Yes.
of the big picture. So that outside trusted perspective is just huge.
Mm. Yeah.
Help you see what you can't see.
Absolutely. I mean, we work as consultants, so we're in the same boat as what you are with this, and fully agree. Where can people find you? Where can they go to see what you're doing and follow, if not engage with you?
Yes. So I can be found on LinkedIn, Rhiannon Albert. And my business is mytrustedhr.com for my website. Yeah, I'd love to hear from everybody.
Yeah, great conversation. We did well, I think, to skim over the politics that are going on in the US at the moment. So well done on that point, and great to connect with you. I look forward to staying in contact and seeing how things pan out in the near term.
So what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon so I can pop up in your feed occasionally with a great tip for your ultimate growth.